What's going on, guys? I'm a regular guy with the Regular Guy Firearms channel. Thanks for watching. Okay, so I put down the AR for a little while, and I figured that, you know what, I would just go ahead and do an update to my AK loading techniques video and all that stuff. Simply because I've learned a few things, I've developed a few extra opinions on things lately, and I figured that I would go ahead and just run an update and take the last video down because this is the most current as it stands right now, okay? So the following stuff that I'm going to go ahead and talk about is stuff that I would personally teach to people based on the many different variants of loading an AK out there. But these are the ones that seem to have been proven the most. And yes, I know that there are other ones out there. These are just the ones that I personally prefer and would consider teaching people. Okay? So here it is. We're going to do it like so. First of all, this is one of the very rare occasions that I have an unloaded gun and magazines, simply because there's going to be a lot of trigger pressing and I would rather not punch a hole in my wall. Number two, I'm going to go over left and right-handed stuff, and then we're going to go over just a standard reload and then a top-off or a tactical reload, as much as I hate that friggin' word, because all it is you topping off the gun. But off the soapbox. Now, as far as all of this is concerned, there are a few different methods to do everything, right? But the first and the simplest method is the following, okay? Now, let's say that you've done some shooting, and that's what you hear, okay, instead of a pow. So, the first method that is preached pretty much around the globe is to just take this magazine and eject it out the gun with your hand. Grab a fresh magazine and insert it. And then charge the gun. Right? Simple enough. And I don't think it really requires further explanation. Because it really doesn't matter how the magazines are situated in your vest. There is no real attention to efficiency and stuff there because the load is pretty much the same regardless to where the bullets are facing or whatever. As long as you train and as long as you make sure that the magazines are facing a consistent direction, it doesn't really matter how it is that you yank it out of the pouch. That's how it'll work. Now, another method is to do this while retaining ammunition, right? Now, there are a couple of different thought processes about this, and only one of them is one that I will advocate simply because the first one requires a dump pouch or a pocket like we all have. Now, from a lot of real prominent trainers that are out there, they'll tell you the following things. Okay, if you use a dump pouch, great. Use it, don't care. However, understand that if you use a dump pouch to throw partial magazines in, you will eventually be in a place where now you have to dig through that thing. Oh, and dump pouches tend to litter all over the place. So if you're going to use a dump pouch, make sure it's got one that's got a collapsible opening to it. And even still, if you have one of those, I would still not advocate using a dump pouch simply because now you have to fish that thing open while just trying to load your gun. And I would like to keep the gun as loaded as possible for as long as possible. Okay? So, as far as retaining ammunition is concerned, I'm just going to imagine that my back pocket is a dump pouch. Okay, you're going to take the old magazine, toss it in a pouch, grab the new magazine, and load it. Now, I would not do this even if I had a dump pouch because just storing it there is no bueno for me. I want my magazines to be where I am going to reach them. Now, there are opinions out there that state, okay, well, I don't want to mix partials that are next in line to grab, essentially, because you'll start here and move across. To me, I would just rather do less fishing in here and just grab the next one available, or regardless to what you've done, just go to the next one in line. That's how you solve that problem. Real easy. You have less stuff hanging off of you now, and that's just how it goes. But really, that's That's it. I mean, if the only other method that I would really describe is to just go ahead and take a knee because you're doing a tactical reload anyway. Get rid of this thing, throw a new magazine in, and then retain your partial. Because if you're taking a knee, one, you're a smaller target profile. Two, this has less space to fall and hit things. Okay, and then you can just stow it however you see fit after that. But the gun is loaded now. Okay, and another thing is that with regardless to what type of reload that you're doing, I would advocate that you charge the gun. And the reason why I would say to just charge the gun is that the minute that you, the human being, starts messing with this, because these will run just fine as they were designed all the time. What I have observed more than anything else is that the minute humans start messing with machines is the minute that they start screwing up. Okay? So you just changed out a magazine and threw another one in. You don't know the following. One, was the magazine that I just ripped out unloaded? Two, if it was loaded, did it pick up a round from this magazine? Because it does happen that a bolt will seat and not pick up a round from that magazine. Okay? So there are two methods that you're going to go over. Either you're going to charge it, or you're going to run a press check. What I would not advise is to do this, simply because if you have just finished shooting at a human being, you're going to have retard strength. Okay? So a simple press check is going to turn into a press check, and now we have a stoppage that you started. So you end up having to charge it the rest of the way, let that fall out, and run the gun anyway. What I would just rather do is, once I've got a new magazine in the gun, just charge the thing, and yeah, a round just kicked out, but I don't care, I just jammed 30 in the gun. Make sense? Now, that's the first loading method. The next few are it's going to get run through a lot faster. Now, the next one is just what is most widely taught in the States and in a lot of other countries, actually. And that is, still, we're using the beer can method, to where we're throwing our elbow up, grabbing this magazine as high as we can get. We're going to use this portion of the magazine, touch the trigger guard, sweep that magazine out, and then run it in to the gun, and then charge it. Okay? As far as retaining partials and stuff, you're going to have to get a little goofy with it, because it will require you to have to handle two objects at once, and then slide out from here. Now, we do have people in the world with small hands. Guys and gals cannot do that as well in a lot of different cases. So, how do we remedy this situation and still retain our magazine with partial ammo in it? Okay, we take a knee because we have the time to do so, run that old magazine out, throw that new magazine in, and charge it. And by the way, this is if you can afford taking a knee. Sometimes you just can't. Okay, reaching down, grabbing what's left of your magazine, making sure that your rounds are seated and not sitting forward. And that's real simple. You just grab it with your finger, real easy stuff, and then stow it. Okay. With the right hand, it is fairly simple as well, because once you have your magazine and all of that craziness, I'm just going to ghetto rig this for 1 second. Now, once you have that click, okay, there are two different ways that you're going to end up trapping this under your arm, by the way, and that's this way or this way, okay? The methodology behind this way is so that you have observation of the E-port and make sure that it is not a stoppage rather than the gun just being empty. And most of the time, it's a Kalash. It's going to just be empty. So, we're going to observe. It's much easier to see that it's got a stoppage and stuff on an AK because the port will just be closed or half jacked open with a problem. So there's that. You just grab your next magazine, go ahead and rock it over, get the old magazine out, run the new one, and then charge it. Okay? If you are trapping it, what you're going to end up having to do is pretty much the same thing. Okay, I would suggest just tilting it really quick, making sure what's going on with it. Run the old magazine out, and then charge it. Notice what I did with my hand here, because as I inserted it, I'm going to just reach over, snag the charging handle with my index finger. Sometimes it'll be more of your hand, and then run it. Okay? And that's really as simple as that gets. Now, the next method is my personal favorite for a variety of reasons, especially once you start getting into positions other than a straight up standing or kneeling position, because there is just less stuff you have to do with your arms. And this is what I've been using for years now, and it hasn't failed me yet. Now, the next method is just a reverse method of that, okay? Instead of reaching all the way over and attaining a beer can grip, what we're going to do is that we're just going to come straight into a magazine with our thumb on top of the end plate, okay? I personally like to trap the gun this way. We'll pull the gun straight out of the magazine, or the magazine straight out of the pouch, my bad. We'll pull it straight out of there. We'll use this portion of the magazine again to index on the trigger guard. Sweep that old magazine out, throw the new one in, and as a lefty, you're going to have to roll this gun over as you charge it. Because if you don't, you will definitely be hit in the face one of these days by a live round, and that freaking sucks. You're probably going to bleed too. Okay? I personally just do not do the partial retention thing. If I can, I just take a knee, drop the partial, get the new one in the gun so that I spend less time fidgeting with more than one thing in my hands, pick it up, and stow it. But generally speaking, I run the gun anyway until it's time to reload it, because the best way to solve that problem is just to load it. Okay? Now, when it comes to doing this, it's just real simple to understand that you do less movement with your elbows. This really comes into play in the prone, okay? Or in a really weird side rolled over position. You're just doing less of this stuff with your arm. So it really just is a less movement type deal. And that's why I personally just like it a lot. There is, however, one more technique that I'm beginning to like more and more, okay? Because the weaknesses of this last technique that I showed you are evident when you wear stuff on your belt. Now, granted, I don't like belts very much, especially as load-bearing devices and stuff like that. I mean, as far as rifle junk, I personally just don't like wearing that stuff on my waist. However, I understand that I do live in the real world, and I will eventually have to confront that one of these days for a while, simply because I've messed with the belt loading stuff before. Okay, so when it comes to all of that, this technique is really weird here. Granted, yeah, that's a training issue, and you can make that easier as time goes on, but I'm telling you guys, I've just done a lot of dry fire practice with that on a belt before, and it just feels weird. Okay? So, here's the deal. The next technique requires another beer can grip, but I like it simply because there's just less moving to do, and I really do believe that it can manufacture itself into a very fast technique. Okay, so you have your AK, you're doing your thing, and now you need the reload. So you go in, you grab your magazine, you have the beer can grip. Now, with this beer can grip, you just extend your thumb, you keep a tight grip on this, you extend your thumb, press the latch with your thumb, and sweep it out of there. Oh, well, what if you miss? Well, a good way to not miss is to use the trigger guard as an index point. So, when you grab the new magazine, you simply just touch on the magazine. I use my knuckle and the trigger guard as an index point because I have a soft index point and a hard one to just ramp that thumb into. So I can just ramp that into that index point that I need, sweep forward, it comes out of there, and load the next one. Now, Another really big thing that I see is that there's just less moving to do anatomically once you've got the old magazine out. Because once you've got that old magazine out, there's just not much else for you to do. Okay? The old magazine comes out, and the new magazine is very close to where it needs to be in the first place, as far as just loading it up. And then, of course, you can go ahead and charge it. You know? And, of course, on the right-hand side of the house, you're pretty much doing the same thing because, again, you have that thumb. You're running your thumb to index both on your middle finger and the trigger guard. You run it forward, throw it in the rest of the way, and then charging it that way without dicking it up. Sorry, guys, I'm a southpaw. But it really is as simple as that. And you don't actually have to mess with more than one object in your hand. Now, for those of you guys that like to do the whole tactical reload thing, okay, which again, I personally don't advocate, but if you're going to do that technique, you might as well do it with this last one as far as an emergency reload or whatever, because it's the most consistent. Because instead of just sweeping it out with your thumb, now this makes sense. Because you can just grab the old magazine out, throw the new one in, and then slide it off. Okay. So if you're going to do that type of thing, I would absolutely advocate using a thumb reload for that retention thing. Now, the cons to this, in my personal opinion, are that I've run across tight magazines before to where just trying to use your thumb is just not enough. Either it be a out-of-spec Circle 10 or the M3s or whatever. I've run across those magazines to where they're so tight that you cannot get them out of there properly. So a better thing to have as far as just tossing those magazines out, is just another object. And it's just easier to gain leverage to run that old magazine out of there, regardless to how loose or tight it is, and it gets out of there and it does its thing. Okay? But the ones that I would advocate the most are the last two, me personally. Just from stuff that I've learned over time and everything else. The second method that I use with just a beer can knockout, that's cool. So many guys have been using it over time. And from the second to the fourth, they're all very good, very efficient, very fast techniques. If you're new, go ahead and use the first one. But once you start to ramp up your skill set and everything else, you can start making yourself a little more efficient at this, and that's what I would say to just go ahead and do. Okay. A big problem that a lot of guys have with the two knockout techniques, where you're either using this or this technique to do this, is that they'll ding up your magazines. Now, while this is true that they will start to ding them up over a pretty good amount of time, what I will say is that it takes thousands upon thousands of freaking reloads to do that. Whether on good magazines, by the way, only with good magazines. But if you have something like surplus steel and Bakelights and what have you, well, surplus steel, Bakelights, and U.S. Palms, you can do just thousands of reloads. Either you're doing them with bullets still in them, or you're doing them empty, which is what they're going to be most of the time anyway, is empty. And you will cause no deformations here until you get to the thousands of repetitions mark. Okay, so what I would personally do is just not worry about it. I mean, if you're running surplus steel, they're between $8 and $10 a piece. I'm okay with that, And you'll know when the gun just starts to mess up a little bit, and when the gun starts to have issues as far as it's just getting stoppages. Generally speaking, if the gun's getting stoppages, it's because your magazine sucks now. Get it out of there, load a new one in, you're back in business. All right? So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave me a comment in the comments section below. If you have your own little personal experiences or your own preferences on technique, I would love to see that in the comments box and all that stuff. Because generally speaking, again, as I've said before, when guys ask questions, the viewers that are subbed to this channel generally answer those questions correctly faster than I do. You know, so that's going to be what it's going to be. Now, what I would ask you guys to do is to go ahead and join us at Gun District. Okay, I'll leave a link for that in the description below. And remember, guys, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.